Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Thank you very much for your passion and to all your team. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity.
All right. Our deep appreciation to you as well.
Thank you. My question is on the balanced relationship between action and synchronicity. As example, I just left my job, but it took me longer than expected, and I was doubting because it happened by choice and not by synchronicity, as if I needed still a lesson to learn.
All right. First of all, it always happens by synchronicity because everything happens by synchronicity. So there's nothing that doesn't happen by synchronicity. It's just that you're not clear about the fact that there are two kinds of synchronicity. The first kind, most of you are familiar with. That's the one you normally talk about. The synchronicity of something being brought to you that's an opportunity to act on. But the other kind of synchronicity is the kind of synchronicity that actually prevents you from acting on things that are not appropriate for you to act on at that particular moment. And that's why it's always synchronicity. Because synchronicity is not only, just to use a simplistic analogy, is not only the gas pedal saying go ahead, it's also the brake saying no, you can't go this way right now. You need to stay where you are, or you need to look for some other avenue that is now something you are able to do, because you're not able to do this right now. So the balance between the idea of the synchronicity that says take this action and the synchronicity that says do not act in this direction is your guiding principle in life. And that's why synchronicity is also an organizing principle, because it's really keeping you on the straight and narrow by saying yes, no, no, yes, no, no, yes, no. It's really allowing you to move through a particular path that is you, by not only allowing you to move forward, but also preventing you to move forward in certain ways that are not appropriate. Does this help?
Yes, but so also my thoughts and because I could have done it like months before, but I didn't.
Why?
But there was not.
Why didn't you?
Because I thought it wasn't the right moment.
Then you are making your decisions, and you have to decide whether your decisions are being made for reasons that are in alignment with your truth or reasons that are out of alignment with your truth. And that's why it's so crucial to get in touch with your belief systems at any given moment, because it's always about the choices you make, but perhaps even more deeply, it's about why you make those choices. So you have to be in touch with your belief systems to understand the reason why you make the choices that you do. Nevertheless, the situation and the circumstance is still brought to you through some form of synchronicity.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That's why, again, we reinforce and encourage the idea that part of the formula that we offer and encourage all of you to use is based on primarily you understanding what the beliefs are that you're holding on to as being true for you in every situation. So the synchronicity will always bring you a circumstance that is designed to reveal to you what you believe to be true, so you can decide whether or not you want to continue to hold on to that belief or let it go. That's the first thing the higher mind and synchronicity does in bringing you into the experience of a particular situation. Does it represent who you prefer to be? Are you willing to take the action that is representative of who you prefer to be? Or are you not willing to take that action, and why or why not? That's the key. Always you have to know the reason for the choices that you make, and then you will be clear and transparent within yourself about what it is you're choosing to do. Yes?
Okay. Yes.
All right.
And I have also about belief systems.
Yes.
When my self-esteem is particularly creative, I arrive to ask myself if it is my lack not being able to interact with a version of my spouse which is more conscious and less reactive. in order to have a more harmonious relationship?
Well, again, the idea is for you to determine clearly within yourself what is and isn't representative of the vibrations in your life you prefer to interact with. So you have to, again, make those decisions about why you are experiencing what you're experiencing, not that it's a one-to-one reflection, but the idea of why you might be willing to continue on something that isn't vibrationally compatible with you. Because you are hoping that somebody else will change?
Yeah, no, I understand it. I think my struggle is that I feel
Your challenge. Your challenge. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't make it a struggle right from the get-go.
Yes.
It's just a challenge. It's something for you to know more about who you really are. So what is your challenge?
To divide my soul from my 3D experience.
Divide your soul?
Yeah, in the sense that I feel a deep, profound love for him.
Yes.
The physical experience,
yes,
is not harmonious. So I find it difficult to accept that I can't reflect this love in my physical experience.
All right, so you are being insistent on the conditions as a measure of whether or not you are who you prefer to be. That's insistence. And I told you that the third part of the formula is you can't assume or insist on anything. You can't put conditions on the idea of your passion. And if you truly love someone, you will then be honest with them in who you actually are in the relationship. And sometimes you have to really understand how important it is to show them the consequences of who you are. So sometimes a demonstration of your love may actually be leaving the relationship to show them that it's not the vibration you prefer. It's not the reflection you prefer. Then you're giving them an opportunity to decide for themselves whether or not they want to maintain that relationship and match your vibration, or whether they wish to continue their vibration and find whatever relationship actually works for them while you go and find the relationship that works for you. That's the most loving thing to do. Love doesn't insist that the other person may change to give you the reflection you think you should be getting from them. That's insistence and placing conditions on them, and that's not love. Does that help?
Yes. Yeah.
So watch what you're defining as love. Because if you really love someone, you will let them be who they truly prefer to be. You can always give them the choice, the opportunity to match your frequency in a way that you prefer. But remember, even if they do choose to match your frequency, it's not the same person anymore anyway. So what do you care that it doesn't really look like the same person? Don't go by surface appearance. If they decided to change and become more compatible with your vibration, it wouldn't be the same person anyway, no matter how you think they look on the surface. So don't insist that it has to be the same person that gives you the reflection in life that you prefer, because it never would be the same person no matter how they look anyhow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
All right. Does that help you?
Yes.
All right.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
I have a set of questions around the nature of dreaming. You've discussed before, that we are actually spirit dreaming, and that your reality, the way you experience reality, is being awake kind of within the dream.
Yes.
What does it mean to actually wake up from the dream? What is true reality?
To die. To go into spirit fully, not experience the idea directly of what you call physical reality.
Okay, so where's the line where the dream starts and the true reality begins? It's really just the physicality?
It's just the frequency that you're operating at. 333 cycles per second, 333,000 cycles per second is the vibrational borderline between non-physical and physical reality. So when you simply alter a pattern of energy within your consciousness in a certain way from spirit, then you direct a portion or a focus of your consciousness in a way that experiences a dream called physical reality. So you have to go in that particular portion of your consciousness lower than 333,000 cycles per second.
So there's no such thing as still being in the dream as a non-physical.
Well, yes, in a sense, because every level within all that is another type of dream. But we simply assume you were referring to the physical version.
No, I want to know, like, is there like an actual waking up completely at some level of the all that is, or would that be going back into the one, which you said you can't really do?
Correct. So in a sense, it's always the one or the portion of the one that is capable of being aware of itself, and therefore it is always, in a sense, a type of a dream, but that's what reality is.
Okay.
Because it's all just happening within the idea of consciousness, of self-awareness.
I see. So maybe the dream itself is the idea that there's another, because that's
Correct.
not true.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, the dream is the one's idea that there is another. That's what creates self-awareness, is that the self is defined by the fact that there's something that appears to be other than self.
Okay.
That is the dream, because there is nothing other than self. But you can have the dream experience that there is.
Okay. And so the process of awakening, within that, there's always going to be the positive and the negative.
And
correct?
the center point.
And the center point.
And remember that the center point, being a point of balance, in a sense, tips the scale slightly toward the positive. Because in a point of balance, you still have the freedom to choose what you prefer, and that's a positive state of being.
Right. So is there always going to be consciousness inhabiting all of those frames, all of those options?
Well, it's existence itself, yes. So it can't cease to exist. Consciousness is simply the expression of existence being self-aware. Existence can't stop existing. That's its natural quality, is to be. And it can't go anywhere because there's nowhere for it to go, because by definition, non-existence doesn't exist. That's its quality, to not be. So that which is cannot become that which is not.
So like just at a practical, in an example, let's say that I am a version of myself that is like fighting with my father.
Yes.
And then I make a choice to mend things and make a more positive choice.
Yes.
Mending things with my father.
Yes.
Let's say there's another version of me that continues to fight with my father.
Yes, in a sense, but that's not where you're focused anymore. In terms of the journey that your particular reflection is experiencing. You've chosen a different set of frames in the film strip, even though the other film strip still exists.
And there's a consciousness inhabiting. There will always be some...
There will always be consciousness in everything, because everything is consciousness.
I see.
Everything is made of consciousness.
So it's always going to be beneficial to the all that is to have some consciousness in that negative experience.
It is what it is. In that sense, it can't be anything else. It is what it is, and everything that it is what it needs to be. Because that's what it is. Otherwise, it would be something different.
Okay.
So needs all of it in order to be what it is. Just like you need all the puzzle pieces in order to form the whole picture. Without one piece, there's no whole picture.
And so let's say, so then I make that choice to go into these other set of frames that are more positive.
Which you are doing constantly anyway. Right.
So what happens to the consciousness that was just inhabiting that frame? Like, do I kick another consciousness out?
No. You have to sort of look at this from a multidimensional perspective. A shift of focus of a level of consciousness is happening on a certain level. The idea of the consciousness having the experience is on a different level. So you can, from a higher level of consciousness, shift your focus, but that doesn't change the fact that, by definition, a certain, let's just say, lower level of consciousness is simply constantly in that frame. You don't destroy the frame just because you've shifted your attention to another frame. Whatever's going on in that frame, whatever that frame represents, is still that frame and always will be. And that's a different level of experience and consciousness than the level that you're shifting your focus from. So just because you have looked at one frame and sort of contemplated what's going on in that frame, and then shifted your focus to another frame, you're shifting from a different level than what that frame represents as its own symbol of an experience. That never changes. It's made of consciousness, but that never changes what it is, because that's what it is that symbol, that expression of consciousness. But you, from another level, have the ability to take your focus off that frame and shift it to another frame. And shifting your attention to another frame changes nothing about the frame you were focused on before. It is what it is, as another level or expression of consciousness. But you have a level of consciousness that experiences the idea of flexibility, of shift, of change. That's a different level of consciousness you're coming from than the level of consciousness that is used to create the frame.
And so from that perspective, I know that reincarnation doesn't exist in that way, but yes. Why wouldn't my consciousness then focus as another person?
Because when you're experiencing things from a certain framework of time, you need that sense of continuity to create the story of a before, a middle, and an after. That's just the way you perceive things from that level of experience.
I see. But eventually, like, I'm not perpetually forever experiencing myself as this identity. Eventually I'll move on, right?
Again, you create the idea of moving on, yes.
I don't want to be stuck forever as this person. All right.
You're not stuck anywhere at any time for any reason whatsoever. I would not necessarily encourage you to label the idea as being stuck. Otherwise, that's how you'll experience it.
Okay. Well, yeah, because billions of times per second, I'm literally...
Exactly. You're always changing. The very idea of the experience that you call change happens because you're constantly shifting your focus. Otherwise, you wouldn't experience any change at all. Yes?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Good day.
So, like, what would first and second density look like?
That may be challenging to describe. Now, you have a kind of analogous representation to some degree in a story on your planet called Flatland, where the beings are less than three-dimensional, so to speak, where they don't understand the concept of height or depth, where the density is very, very low, vibrationally speaking, and they cannot necessarily imagine the idea of an up or a down. They can only imagine the idea of a forward, a back, a left, and a right. So they're very compressed into a very specific kind of densified focus of their existence of reality, their experience of reality. And it's sort of similar to the idea of how many people in your reality, in the third dimension, the fourth dimension, so to speak, can't necessarily understand the perspective of a fifth dimensional spirit being who can move through walls, see through walls, and all those sorts of things because of their particular perspective. So it's sort of a similar analogy to what you're not capable of perceiving, because you can't necessarily right now completely stretch your senses beyond the realm of fourth density as a physical being. Although to some degree you can exhibit some of that. And to some degree, a lower density being can imagine certain things that would be considered a philosophical point of view, but they're not really experiencing those things directly as they would if they were actually projecting their consciousness into a higher dimension. Did that make sense?
To some degree, as much as my mind can stretch to understand.
Yes. You can have just as much of a challenge imagining lower densities as you can imagining higher ones.
Is there a single clock for the whole universe, much like we have atomic clocks on Earth?
Well, if you're talking about the physical universe, then yes, it's what your scientists refer to as the Planck scale, Planck time. Because again, we have said that this is the actual tick of the clock of physical reality. This is what determines how many billions of times per second you are actually shifting. It's 10 to the 43rd. That's how many ticks of the clock there are in every second. 10 to the power of 43. That's the Planck scale. That's Planck time. That's the tick of the clock of the physical universe.
Fascinating. Let's see. What's the difference between the higher mind, the soul, and spirit guides?
All right. The soul, as we have said, is kind of like an overarching identity. And if it decides or chooses to have what you would call a physical experience, a portion of the soul, the non-physical portion, remains as the higher mind, and another portion is focused into what you experience as the physical mind. The physical mind has the physical experience, which feeds back into the higher mind and into the soul that gathers that information and that energy and creates a more, shall we say, specific version of itself called spirit, because a spirit is specifically connected to a particular personal identity's physical experience. But that feeds back into the greater soul, who then contains that experience of that physical reality experience of the physical mind, having generated a kind of spirit representation of that experience in physical reality. So a soul, as we have often said poetically, is like unfired clay, and the spirit is like the ceramic that has been fired based on a specific physical experience. Spirit guides are those that simply are in spirit and remain in spirit while you have a physical experience, and are there to help guide you along with the higher mind. So your higher mind is kind of like your personal spirit guide, but it's a portion of your own soul, whereas spirit guides are expressions of perhaps a different identity, a different individual who simply isn't, in your experience, incarnate at that moment, and who is willing to help you along with your higher mind, guide you in physical life. Is that explaining it clearly enough?
Yes, that's fascinating. When we see others, as you've explained, our reality is a reflective reality.
Yes.
And so how do we interpret another person's expressions and their behavior, because we're actually seeing a reflection of our own consciousness?
Yes, but you're picking up on the vibrations that they're giving off, and you are translating them as best as you possibly can, or at least in the most relevant way, according to your own belief systems, about what you need to represent them by. So you're creating a simulation of them, picking up on their vibrational energy and creating a version of them that meets your particular filters or needs or belief systems about exactly how you need to see them and how you need to interact with them in the mutually agreed upon third reality that you are creating together.
So in order not to take responsibility for another person's negative behavior,
Yes.
while at the same time realizing that you are receiving a reflective experience.
Yes, but again, as we have said, it's not always a one-to-one reflection. There can be a variety of different degrees of reflection based on what it is you need to understand out of the relationship and experience, and what they need to understand out of the relationship and the experience. So it's not just a one-to-one reflection, philosophically speaking.
So the idea of going into a belief system where, oh, well, this is happening and that's happening, so it must mean that I'm this or that, it doesn't really serve you to interpret what you're experiencing that way.
Well, we're
Is that
not saying you
correct?
can't interpret it, but what we're saying is you have to be very clear about what the interpretation is, because you can misinterpret it based on your belief systems.
Right.
So
Because
the
that's
clearer
where,
you are, the clearer the interpretation will be about what it is that you need to get out of it, what it is they need to get out of it, and what you are responsible to them for without being responsible for them.
so there, it's a fine line between letting your negative beliefs come in and, in a sense, undermine your self-esteem by taking responsibility for another person's negative behavior.
Yes.
And at the same time, it gives you an opportunity to look within and see whether or not you are exhibiting similar behaviors.
Correct. So you have to be very clear in your discernment about exactly to what degree the reflection is germane and relevant for you and to what degree it isn't.
And to you, good day.
How are you?
Perfect, and you?
I'm great.
All right.
Okay. Did humans inherit archetypal symbology from both the Sasquatch and the Anunnaki when they were hybridized? Or
The archetypal level is a collective, unconscious level that involves every single being on your planet. It doesn't mean human or Sasquatch only. It means everything. Archetypal levels are a reflection of the entire collective unconscious of your entire planet.
okay.
So
okay.
everything is
So-
included in it.
Okay, so the injection of the Anunnaki genes did not have any effect on that. Is that right?
Of course it had an effect. It added a different archetype, but still it became part of the archetypal structure of the collective consciousness of your planet.
Okay, so what archetype was added?
Well, the connection to the concept of extraterrestrial consciousness.
Okay, and has it also evolved over time?
Of course it has, like everything.
Okay, so do we have any uh, symbolism for it in our culture or world right now? Like, how do we recognize that archetype?
There are many symbols for the idea of your recognition of extraterrestrial consciousness. Whichever symbol you're attracted to use is fine, because they're all belonging to the unconscious archetypal level of the collective. So some people will use the concept of the actual letters ET. Some will use the idea of a configuration of a flying saucer. Some will simply see it as the idea of the image of another planet. There are many ways to represent the archetypal symbol of extraterrestrial consciousness based on your particular affinity for a particular symbol that represents it.
Okay, and how do you interact with archetypes in your civilization? How do the archetypes help people in your civilization?
It again gives us a clearer understanding of what we are not only as individuals in relation to the archetype of the collective, but it gives us a clearer understanding and ability to interact with the collective as well, simultaneously. In other words, we see the idea of our existence multidimensionally at the same time.
Okay, so like, do they help you in your endeavors of, say, first contact or any other endeavors in your world? Like, do they take physical form, or do you communicate with them in a different way, like you communicate with your higher mind through your ships?
It's similar to that idea because, again, we represent and understand the idea of archetypes as being a part of our collective consciousness, and therefore any individual who chooses to relate to the idea of the archetypal level in their own particular way will create their own symbology that's relevant for them to allow them to experience that relationship in the way that works for them. So many different kinds of symbols can be created. Sometimes it can even be that something will project itself to look like it's actually physically in our reality. It just depends on what works for the individual's relationship with that particular archetypal representation.
Okay, Bashar. Sure.
Sometimes the archetype will look like a geometric object. Sometimes the archetype might present itself in what you would recognize as an animal form. Sometimes it might represent itself as the form of a Sasani being. Sometimes it might represent itself as the form of energy of some sort. It just depends on the individual's relationship with that particular archetypal section, shall we say, of the collective unconscious, although we don't really have an unconscious. So for us, it's a little different.
Okay, Bashar. And then there used to be an empire named Sasanian Empire in the Middle East.
Yes, it was
In your-
named after our civilization.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Like, what's the connection with your civilization?
The
And like, it
connection
was,
is that there
yeah.
was an entity on the earth at that time from our civilization who explained the name of our civilization was Sasani, but it was misunderstood as the name of the individual entity. This entity was considered to be some sort of a divine entity or a godlike entity, even though it was simply one of us. But being very much more advanced, it was taken to be some sort of supernatural entity. Over time, a being was born on your planet that was named after this particular entity. There was a connection energetically between them, and the parents of that particular individual that was born was named Sasan or Sasani. And then when that particular individual had a grandson, and the grandson created a particular physical political empire on your planet, he decided to name the empire after his grandfather, who was named Sasan and Sasani. And therefore that's how the idea of the Sasani empire became named after our civilization, because it was named originally for the grandfather whose name was taken from the supernatural entity that everyone assumed was a godlike figure, but was only one of us.
Sure, Bashar, that's very illuminating. And can you also tell me the difference between inspiration and motivation? Like, what is inspiration in comparison to
Well,
motivation?
inspiration can be the idea of the unfolding of your imaginative connection to the higher mind to present you with the concepts that represent your passional path. But motivation is that which uses your belief systems to determine how willing you are to actually take action on that inspirational path or idea. That
Sure.
was your last question.
Sure, Bashar, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.